Tonight, we look back at the Penrith Panthers' premiership triumph. Toulouse raised 50 and a glass of champagne, and a look ahead at the Betfred Super League Grand Final. Yes, hello, and welcome to the Sideline Chat podcast, a one-stop shop for rugby league. Along with Mark Hendry, I am Connor Marcellus, and today we are going to bring you your NRL Grand Final and Super League Playoffs Debrief Part 2. And before we get into all the action over the weekend and in the run-up to the Betfred Super League Grand Final, we first have to look back at the NRL Grand Final for our final thoughts of the NRL season. And everyone knows the result, really. The Penrith Panthers winning their third premiership, downing the South Sydney Rabbitohs 14 points to 12. What did we make, Mark Hendry, of that Grand Final?
Close and intense and unpredictable indeed, and a very fast game, I must add to that list.
Oh, definitely fast. I can definitely tell you that. But I tell you what, the defensive displays, even before the first try was scored, the first 15 minutes of defense was, you couldn't tell who was going to get the upper hand of this eventually.
No, it was very, very, like I said, unpredictable was the word that pretty much summed up the whole game from start to finish, and especially in those first 15 minutes, like you mentioned. Discipline
was strong from both sides early on. Even though the Rabbitohs were getting out-muscled at various stages, they still maintained discipline, no trouble.
That's true. And also, like you just mentioned, well, not having much of the ball, they still managed to hold on really, really well, which is good to see.
Yeah, and of course, it ended up being the Penrith Panthers who would end up breaking that deadlock to secure the first try of the match, and it was their favourite left-hand side that did all the damage early.
It certainly was, and Matt Burton, well-deserved try. Penrith are definitely going to miss him next season.
Well, Dally M Centre of the Year in what really has to be, I'd have to say, his first full year, despite playing a couple of years beforehand up to this point. This was his first full year in the top flight, and I think he handled it rather well.
Yes, very well indeed. And he's got a big future ahead.
Well, a big future, and in his preferred position of 5/8, much to the, I would say, the tears and the joy of the Bulldogs faithful, myself included, but we can't allow ourselves to jump that far ahead.
No, not yet anyway.
This was sort of, I think, if you think back to May, just after the Magic round, when the crackdown on the high shots happened and you had players being marched from the field either with red or yellow in the eyes, we just use hand signals in this part of the world. Oh, but with all the sin bins, a couple of the send-offs, and the blowout scorelines because of the modification to the 6 again rule, you would have thought this grand final would have been ruined in May.
Yes, totally.
But I got to say, it didn't disappoint. It failed to disappoint. It was absolutely remarkable. I mean, yeah, big hits on. I think you had, speaking of Matt Burton, he got rattled up by Cole Matungi a couple of times, trying to shoot out of the line.
Yes.
You had Nathan Cleary literally get fended off by Cody Walker like he was getting shoved to the ground. I mean, he was. Well, he couldn't handle Cody Walker. And I mean, that second half, the tense was all of it. You were literally on the edge of your seat wondering who was going to come up with the next move. And
exactly.
It's just unfortunate that Cody Walker came up with that move for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. I feel so sorry for Cody Walker. When I saw that, obviously live, when I saw that pass happen, I thought, oh no, what's he done there? He shouldn't have. I personally feel, and I think you will agree with me right here, I personally feel that he shouldn't have passed it straight out. He shouldn't have gone to that guy first.
I mean, pass was on. Don't get me wrong. He just hit the wrong man. That's all. If he goes short, he catches Crichton now, and Gagai get at sort of open range until he gets to Edwards. By that point, Johnson could have come up either on his outside still or turn underneath on the inside. You create a 2-on-1. The Rabbitohs then and go in the score from that deep in the field.
And that could have And I think that is the game changer. That
That
play right there was the game changer.
And they started throwing up the Bob McCarthy try he scored in the 1967 Grand Final when South Sydney, ironically, still South Sydney in the Grand Final. Who would have thought about that?
Yeah.
Down Canterbury 12 points to 10 by scoring something similar to what Cody Walker did. But Canterbury were up 8-5 in that at a fair instead of trailing by 2, I think they were at the time.
Yes, they were.
I'll tell you,
Because it was 8-6 at half time. So, yeah, it was pretty much 8-6 until Crichton scored that try. So, yeah.
and then the Rabbitohs. Oh, just the last 5 minutes was so painful to watch. I mean, they got the try.
From Johnston.
They had an opportunity. It was there. They could have leveled that game up. And you would have thought Adam Reynolds, he's made for moments like this.
Yeah.
He was there for that moment.
Being one of the sharpest shooters in the game. And yeah.
But it just unfortunate, just not to be. Misses the goal, couldn't nail the 2-point field goal. It would have forced the grand final into extra time, probably for the first time since 2015 and when the rules were changed.
I personally believe that if Adam Reynolds could have, if he had if he had a little bit more height and a little bit more length on that field goal, he would have got it. But I also personally think that if he got that conversion, Rabbitohs would have gone on to win that match by probably another converted try.
Or even if I would have argued 1-point field goal.
Well, that too, yeah.
But it just turned out not to be. And I mean, the Rabbitohs did remarkable to get that far after being written off so early in the year.
Especially after they got beaten by 50 the second time, they were written off. They were written off. The first time they got beat by 50, they were written off. But then they got beat by 50 a second time.
No one gave them a hope of getting to the grand final.
But here they were in the grand final.
And then they finish third because, I mean, you look at, the Eels, Manly, the Roosters around them. If the Rabbitohs were on, they would have taken all three of them. And take two of them, they did. I mean, they leveled the Roosters. Then they meet Penrith in the first week of the finals, stun the whole league by actually winning.
Yes.
And turn the finals on its head. Then they flogged Manly in Brisbane to get into the grand final. And then they almost pull off another upset over Penrith.
Yeah, nearly is the key word there. But look, I felt so heartbroken for the Rabbitohs. They came so close. They
all the storylines. You had Benji Marshall, who as it turns out, did actually play his last game in the NRL, having announced his retirement just a day, really. You had Adam Reynolds in his final game for the South Sydney Rabbitohs before linking up with the Broncos for the next year. And Wayne Bennett was going to go on a sabbatical or just a gap year just so he could start recruiting for when he comes back in 2023. So there was a lot of storylines for the Rabbitohs, and it just went a little... They were there, but just couldn't get over the line fast enough.
Yeah. I felt so heartbroken for South Sydney, but in a way, you had to congratulate Penrith on the massive effort they did to hold on and win the grand final, playing every single finals match in the lead up to it. 2
of the last 10 premiers now. They joined the Cowboys of 2015 for doing a feat like that.
Yes.
Now, usually we pick out a stand-up player we thought from on the winning side. This time we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to name, of course, the Clive Churchill medalist, and we're going to say if we actually agree with the final decision. So, the Clive Churchill medalist for the 2021 Telstra Premiership Grand Final was Nathan Cleary of the Penrith Panthers. 111 running meters, 3 tackle breaks, 5 goal line dropouts, and a free from free goals converted. Was he the best on the ground that night? Right for
Well,
Penrith.
well, before I say what I think, because I was talking to Connor during the match via a audio call, I said if Penrith win this, Cleary will get Churchill hands down, no arguments whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
Well, he won the Churchill medal, but there was a lot of players I could have easily picked out, such as, let me see. I know Toto had a bit of quiet, not that he could have been one. Burton, especially. Coruscant and probably maybe Kickow as well. I could have picked out of those ones. But in a way, Cleary did deserve it as well.
Well, I mean, 5 goal line dropouts. He outkicked Adam Reynolds in the game management department. And like I said, 5 goal line dropouts. I mean, the Rabbitohs were just eating up everything Cleary was serving up.
Yeah. But you could say that Cleary has now lived up to a big pressure game.
And I would say, I mean, I might have actually said my criticisms of the Penrith Panthers in the past. You know my criticisms, and I think I can now believe that Penrith are a genuine powerhouse now. I mean, I think they've finally lived up to all the hype that was promised about them.
Yeah, that's true. They nearly made it last year. They would have got the chokers tag if they lost to Melbourne. Or was it to Parramatta they lost? If they lost to Parramatta, they would have got the chokers tag, but they went on to define that.
No, they did rather well. I think Ivan Cleary can be very proud of his efforts to become not only the 3rd coach to win the Penrith Panthers a premiership, but the 2nd father-son duo.
Yes.
But that just makes it even more special, I would have to say.
It certainly does. And I also, Paul Kent from NRL 360 of Fox League, he said the Panthers are done. They proved him wrong.
Hey, Kenty was only, we got to remember, Kenty was only going off what he saw. And if he saw that the Rabbitohs, because everyone was expecting Penrith would win, I think Kenty would have been the same way. And then all of a sudden, the Rabbitohs come out of nowhere and say, hey, in the typical way, in a fashion, yeah, so what? You might be the best defensive side in the NRL, but you got to get through me.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're off to the prelims, and you're not. So you might just do it the hard way.
Yeah. And
that's exactly what happened there.
And then after the grand final, the Panthers CEO Brian Fletcher came out and said, we regret parting ways with Cleary back in 2015.
Ooh.
I think something along those lines.
Somewhere Gus Gould was probably waiting to maybe return serve on that one.
Maybe.
But I think he will get the credit for, think of it, 10 years ago, Penrith were in financial ruin. Fast forward, they are now premiers.
Yeah.
And all the financial rewards that go with it. Is this the beginning of the golden age of Western Sydney sides?
Well, Penrith have, arguably, a lot of people have said, even the more professionals have said that Penrith have got the best junior system in the league. And now that they're filtering through those, most of them are now in this top 30 side and played in this grand final, and they have shown. So they are up there, it shows that their junior system is working and working well.
I definitely agree with you there. And I mean, you think of it this way, Panthers are amongst the the top 2 benchmarks for this league. The Eels are right behind. I would think the Eels are in that category right behind them. And then it'll be interesting to see where the Bulldogs standards go in 2022, because they are technically part of that Western Sydney bracket right there. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how these 3 sides, because I don't think anyone has any faith in the West Tigers at this stage, to really deliver sustained success for the people of Western Sydney.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting to see like you said, it's going to be a good battle to have.
It will be very interesting to see the dynamic over the next 5 years with the Western Sydney sides, Penrith, Parramatta, and Canterbury. Maybe the Tigers if they can and stop being a basket case.
Well, yeah, exactly. Which I hope you see. So that to have the extra team in the element of what you said with the Western Sydney sides.
Exactly. Now, moving on, we now jump forward to the south of France, where the Catalan Dragons qualified for their first ever Betfred Super League Grand Final, downing Hull KR 28 points to 10. What happened here for the Dragons?
They just pretty much went on as normal. Basically, nothing. I mean, Hull KR did throw a little bit at them, but I don't think it was enough.
The first half was tight, I'd have to say. A lot of nerves on Archie Moore. He was starting at fullback because there was no Sam Tompkins for this clash, and there's all the speculation that he still might be fit for the grand final come this Sunday. But I think it's the second half is what killed Hull KR after being in it. I mean, 2 tries in it. Hull KR could have easily found their way into the game, but the Dragons just flourished in this environment.
Yeah, they certainly did. But 2 of the Catalan's tries came from Dagger not being able to.
Oh, from kicks, yes.
Kicks.
He was exposed at the back.
Ben Garcia's try.
How about that? Local lad scoring the first try in the Catalan Dragons' first home semi-final.
Yeah, but Dagger couldn't handle Josh Drinkwater's kick. And then when Archie Morg went across, Dagger yet again couldn't handle a kick, but it was from Maloney this time around, so he couldn't handle it.
3 kicks. That led to 3 tries because he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what. Looking
that's
at the coverage in the lead up to this semi-final, it was absolutely crazy. The whole of Perpignan just seemed to be bleeding red and gold.
Yeah.
I mean, quite literally, there were red and gold flares going off everywhere. The flag of the Catalonia region would have been flying proud. And I mean, they got coverage in the French press, which is probably very rare for them as representing the sport in their homeland, but they got coverage in some of France's biggest publications.
Well, not only that, there was a bit of coverage over here in Australia, in particular James Maloney, when I saw on one of the local news stations here in Australia saying that James Maloney steered Catalan Dragons to a grand final. So the Super League and Catalan Dragons did get a little bit of coverage. Not much, but a little bit, which I found was good to see.
Well, I think the priority is they're opening up eyes, not just in the southwest of France, but they're opening up eyes all across France, because this could be the beginning of the rebirth of French Rugby League after years of turmoil. They got that big test coming up against England later in the month, which will be a huge reward for them, first time in 4 years, and the reflection of where French Rugby League could be heading into the World Cup, not just next year's World Cup, but the one scheduled for France in 2025. This could be the biggest years French Rugby League has ever seen since its inception in the 1930s.
Yes, it could be. And I certainly hope it does, because having another nation that does extremely well in rugby league is a very, very good sign indeed.
Well, it's not a matter of a new nation. It's just France being great at rugby league again, because they were one of the 4 powerhouses. The Kangaroos, the Kiwis, Great Britain, the Lions, and France were the 4 powerhouses of rugby league. But since the 70s, France has deteriorated, and it's only been those 3 until recently when Tonga comes. So if France can reestablish itself as the 5th powerful league nation in the world, good times could lay ahead.
Most certainly it can. But overall, I don't think really Hull KR really had anything for Catalans in the second half.
No, I don't think so. I think the Dragons were just too good in the second half, running in 3 tries to 1. Ryan Hall, of course, bagging a try in a semi-final yet again.
Yes.
But it just wasn't enough. But I wouldn't be so disappointed if I was Tony Smith at Hull KR.
No, I wouldn't be either.
You reflect on that season, you think, this is the first time we've made it to the semi-finals. We scraped into the top six. Well, scraped in, because if Casper had won, anything could have happened.
Yes, that's
happened in round 25. But Hull KR were good enough to be there. They knocked off the Warrington Wolves in the first week. So they could have upset.
Which is a massive upset, yeah.
They could have really thrown a huge spanner in the works if they got through against the Catalan Dragons, who had a couple of close contests earlier in the year. So this was just a culmination. And reflecting on where they were, never mind just last year when they finished as wooden spooners in an 11-team competition, but the fact that they were relegated at the end of 2016 and came back at the end of 2017 to go from relegation to semi-final playoff action, it's a remarkable turnaround.
It certainly is, and not a fairly quick turnaround, but it has happened probably a lot quicker than what other teams would do. But it's, like you said, a remarkable turnaround.
I think Hull KR are probably one of the feel-good stories. In my mind, they are a feel-good story because they were down on their knees in the championship. They fought back. Tim Sheen's got them back in. Then Tony Smith, experienced coach in his own right, guided them within 80 minutes of Old Trafford. That would have been big for a club like Hull KR.
It most certainly would have. And who knows what could have happened in that grand final if they did manage to make it. But we'll have to wait and see. Maybe
and they're getting some good players as next year. Lachlan Coote is a big name signing for the Robins.
Very much so.
They won't be any fallback trouble if they make it to the semi-finals again next year, believe me. And they're getting a very good goal kicker. So there's two problems Hull KR will fix up. Pressure under the high ball and goal kicking. Big wins for Hull KR going into the off-season. It's just a matter of trying to maintain the standards laid down this year.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, no real surprises in this second semi-final. St. Helens running over the top of the Leeds Rhinos 36 points to 8.
No surprise whatsoever. St. Helens dominate all across the park all game long.
It's just absolutely crazy. Within 5 minutes, Saints had already got up over the Leeds Rhinos with the Welsh Flyer himself, Regan Grace, just diving for the corner.
Yes. Well, he kind of had to do a bit of a hard way by going over top of a Rhinos defender too. So it wasn't easy, but it was still fairly straightforward in his book. So
it was very much straightforward. The left edge of St. Helens absolutely tore Leeds apart because he would go on to bag a second try later, and then Mark Percival would add a double of his own.
Yeah. But
you want to know where the real damage was done to the Leeds Rhinos? Through the middle once again, and I think we all know what's going to come next. The standout player for St. Helens, big bad Alex Walmsley.
Yeah, I was waiting for it.
Best front rower in the world, dream team front rower once again, and for St. Helens, 184 running meters. The one try assist he set up for James Roby, 14 tackle breaks. And remember, he is a front rower, 14 tackle breaks and 2 offloads.
Unbelievable.
This man Mountain could run through literally any defense.
Yeah.
He's a one-man army, a mean green fighting machine.
Yes, very much so. But that setup worked to get James Roby over. And then James Roby's effort to get to the line by hitting and spinning was brilliant as well. That combination between Walmsley and Roby is a brilliant one.
Leeds were on the back foot from the word go, and losing Tom Briscoe midway through the first half didn't help their cause either when he got yellow carded.
No. And that's pretty much when
it didn't help his cause at all.
No.
Nor did it help Leeds' cause for that matter. They're still fighting hard. They earned their right to be in the semi-final after knocking off. Wait, I'm going to get this. Bloody hell, that's terrible. 2 weeks. I can't if you remember the other team in the semi-finals. Oh, that's right, the Wigan Warriors. God, that's
Yes.
terrible.
Which was, in another way, another upset too. So
Yeah, the strong defense in the back end of the season did them justice, but it just went out the window
it
in this
certainly
game.
did. Yeah,
It went far out the window.
yeah. I have to say, Percival's second try, St. Helens were even down to play and they still managed to score. That shows that Leeds were like down and out
I mean,
in
that
that
was,
whole match.
again, it comes down to that class difference between what we see as the top sides in Super League. Of course, St. Helens are the benchmark beyond on any shadow of a doubt. The Catalan Dragons came on in leaps and bounds from last year. Warrington and Wigan's, I think, stages, they were either bordering on wavering or they went well up until a certain point when the crunch time came in and they failed to stand up. That's how I sum up where the best four sides in Super League are at this moment.
Yep, completely agree with you.
But Leeds are still nipping at the heels, and they're still pushing to become, once again, that great Super League powerhouse that won 8 grand finals in 10 years.
Yeah, that is
Well, 8 and 13.
Yeah, that's still a very, very impressive record to have.
It is, and I think it's a good nod to Richard Agar as well, who, I mean, remember, Leeds were in a similar boat. They were facing relegation. They were lucky to survive. They had a lean year in 2019 and have just steadily built like that. Made it to the top 6. Unfortunately, didn't do well against the Catalan Dragons. And bounced back, made it past the first week of the playoffs, and then to be up against the reigning champions and just, again, like OKR, not their night.
No, not at all.
But they're looking good for next year as well. Already a whole slew of names coming in. James Bentley comes in and from the Saints. Blake Austin signed from the Warrington Wolves. Not sure how he fits into the grand scheme. Should Luke Gale play on and fulfill his contract? And I think the big one, Aiden Caesar, picked up from the Huddersfield Giants. I think he's a very good acquisition if Gale or either goes or he's all there, but still remains injured on the sidelines there.
Yeah. Look, they're building up to something big, the Rhinos. So it's a matter of how big and how soon is the question. So we have to wait and see what happens next season.
Exactly, yeah. Well, it could only actually be a couple of months away if things go according to plan for literally everyone in the UK. It could be back to a February time slot. So let's hope we can get at the jump early.
Yeah, let's hope
Now,
so.
Championship semi-finals action. The first one to look at takes us back to the south of France, but this time to Toulouse from the Stade Ernest Wallot. On Toulouse Olympique running out 51-12 victors over the part-timers, the Batley Bulldogs.
Is it really a surprise, that result?
Judged on the first half or the second half? Because if you'd say judged on the first half, you'd have to have given the Batley Bulldogs a chance.
Judged on the second half.
Second half, it was Toulouse all the way. That defining moment early on in the second half, Elliot Hall came onto the field. He was the hero for Batley when they downed Bradford at the Fox's Biscuit Stadium and taking advantage of some poor Bradford defense down their right-handed and defensive side. He couldn't handle the ball.
No.
And from the moment that happened, and because it just went south out from there, the moment Junior Vaivai scores his first try very early on, it all went downhill from there. Because then what happens? Mark Caroline crosses over. Justin Sangare. Oh, that was brilliant.
Brilliant stuff, yeah.
And that was just, he looked dynamic for Toulouse, who's right there. Then Mathieu Josami down the right-hand edge of the Olympique. And he could potentially play for France at the end of the year test match. So again, the showcasing of the French talent before an old head in Mitch Garbutt iced the game right there.
Yeah.
You fought until El Junior Vaivai's second try, and then Tony Gigo's drop goal on the back of it. But That try from Johnson, and I do mean Greg Johnson in this front, he could have turned the game at 16-12 with Toulouse narrowly leading at the break. You would have thought, oh, they've been flashy all year, but when it comes to the crunch time, they didn't put Batley away quick enough.
No, they certainly didn't. Batley did have a good chance. Like I said, they were down 16-12, but they did have a chance to try and cause a massive upset. But
It would have been a massive upset if they could do it. And I actually heard during the call, their whole salary cap, £200,000 for a part-time side. £200,000.
wow,
That's not one player. That's 30 players. The average they were earning, I think they quoted it as somewhere between £5,000 and £8,000 all up.
wow.
Their whole contract. That's how much of a part-time side they were. When you look at the full-time side, like Toulouse and even and fellow other sides as well. This is why London have had to go part-time because, finance is being the reason behind this. But to be 80 minutes away from the £1 million game and a shot at Super League on essentially what we would call a shoestring budget, when you see clubs getting millions of dollars or pounds annually to run the football club, it's a remarkable achievement.
It certainly is, and it goes to show that part-time clubs can still mix it up with the full-time big squads.
Yeah, I don't think Craig Lingard would have been disappointed in this game. I think they have done remarkably well. I mean, their members and the local community, of course, will be proud of them and for the effort they put in, despite the unflattering scoreline.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Like, they did so well to get there in the first place. And they did do it easy in the elimination final the week prior against the Bradford Bulls. Like, that wasn't an easy match either.
Big gripe for me, though, and it's on the other side, Sylvain Houle must be fuming with the way Toulouse played for the majority of that game. A lot of drop ball. They let Batley get a sniff, and it could have backfired spectacularly to have been the Championships league leaders and then bow out 80 minutes before the £1 million game. I would have been fuming if I was Sylvain Houle.
I don't know. I mean, once they found the rhythm to lose, they were like unstoppable.
They were unstoppable, for the lack of a better word. And they are 80 minutes away from potentially becoming the second French side in the Betfred Super League for 2022.
Yes.
But how will they get there? Well, we have to wait to find out, because then our opponents in the £1 million game aren't too bad themselves. The Featherstone Rovers downing the Halifax Panthers 42 points to 10.
Yeah. Halifax weren't quite in that match as well. I think Featherstone completely dominated the match from start to finish.
The weight of experience, a lot of Super League experience, mind you, in this Featherstone side. You look at the 13 that took the 13 alone. Alex Walker, Chris Wellham played for Salford in the Grand Final in 2019. New Brown was sort of a regular utility in the NRL. Brett Ferris, former Super League champion himself. Craig Kopchak. That wealth of experience in there, and players that are good enough to play in Super League as well. I think Frankie Holton during the call was mentioned as a back rower that could potentially thrive in a Super League environment, and I believe they said he was picked up by Hull KR for next year.
That's a good signing, and see has the potential.
But Featherstone were just at another level to Halifax, and it was reflected in the scoreline.
It certainly was, and I thought Halifax might have been a lot better off, like, coming into this match. The game that they played against Whitehaven was very, very close indeed. I thought, oh, here we go. Halifax could take this to Featherstone, but how wrong was I?
Yeah, it was just an absolute capitulation of the Halifax Panthers side. First year since the rebrand. But what's amazes me is Halifax had periods in the game when Featherstone were down to 12 men. And they failed to capitalize on that front.
Yeah. But
they just couldn't capitalize.
no, they couldn't.
Even if they had two periods, one very early when the game was in the balance, and then another one where they could have scored a couple more late tries to make the scoreline look more respectable, there was just nothing in it.
It certainly wasn't. But yeah, I personally think nowadays teams have got the less of down to 12 men or less tend to score points when they're a player down to what the team with the extra man that does nowadays. I personally believe that. Yeah, I know it happens over here in NRL, and I think over in the Super League as well. Or even in St. Helens Leeds match, St. Helens were down a play and they still managed to score through Percival. So it's become more of a regular occurrence that if you've got a player down, your chance of scoring more points are still just as the same as if you've got 13 or not 13.
Well, the year comes to an end for the Halifax Panthers in the first year since the rebrand. Scott Griggs is now farewell. The Irish international pulling up his boots at the end of this year. So for his brother Simon, who coached him, and well, I think in the win, firstly over Whitehaven and didn't play in this game. It's the end of an era for certain Irish internationals. As for Featherstone, meanwhile, it just sets up a mouth-watering showdown for the £1 million game when it comes round this Sunday. This is going to be good. But before we look into that, there is one more Super League match we have to look at. The Betfred Super League Grand Final. The Catalan Dragons. First time at Old Trafford, hosting the current two-time reigning Super League champions, St. Helens. What a mouth-watering prospect.
Mate, it is going to be game on from start to finish and possibly even beyond.
I thought we had a spectacular grand final last year when we had the two best sides going at each other. Other, of course, the Wigan Warriors who got the jump over the Saints in the last legs of the season. Even with that spectacular finish in a nail-biter. I'm expecting bigger things in this grand final. There are just storylines upon storylines you could deliver in this game, and probably one of the nicest touches you could have. Rob Burrow to present the Harry Sunderland medal to the winning, to the man of the match in the grand final.
That is such a nice thing to do.
It is.
Good on the Super League for organising this and for him to do it.
So now let's turn our focus to the game. There's a lot of will he or won't he going on at the moment. But first of all, regarding Sam Tompkins. Does he take to the field for the Catalan Dragons?
Yes. Simple as that. Yes, he will.
I think looking at it at the start of the year, I thought this would have been a repeat of last year's grand final and St. Helens to come out on top. But here, I tell you what, anything could happen. You might look at the Catalan Dragons and think, this is their first grand final in 15 years. They've never played in a grand final. No. True, but they featured in two Wembley finals for the Challenge Cup. One loss, one victory. I know many could argue it's the same, but not really. But the atmosphere, it will sort of be the difference. But the main part is you actually look at that 17 that could take to the field. In the Catalan squad alone, the Tompkins brothers both have grand final experience during their time at the Wigan Warriors. Tom Davis, it's the same story as well. Dean Vare, part of the Penrith Panthers 2020 side. James Malone only has had grand final experience in victory as well as in defeat. Gil Dudson, Michael McAlora, Mike McMeekin. There is a good core. And you throw Sam Cassiano in as well. There's a good core of the Catalan Dragons best 17 that could take to the field that have played in the grand final, either in a winning side or in the losing side. They know what to expect. And I think they'll guide the French youngsters in their side, both in the squad on grand final day and on the field come game time, This is going to be mouth-watering.
It most certainly is. But you have to look at St. Helens too. They are the reigning champs.
Two-time reigning champions.
Sorry.
And looking to achieve the second Super League three-peat in the competition's history. Only one other side has done it. Of course, we've talked about it. The Leeds Rhinos side of 2007 to 2009 that have achieved that three-peat. For St. Helens, history beckons for them as well.
But they've also got plenty of experience across the park.
Oh, they do.
Grand finals.
They do. They have had the benefit of being able to keep their grand final side together for back-to-back titles and could do it for a third. Absolutely insane for one of the most professional sides in the north of the world.
Yeah. It's going to be, like I said, a very mouth-watering match indeed, and a very, very hard one to predict. It's going to be edge of your seat stuff.
It will be, but there are two areas we need to look at: middle of the field and the halves. You got the inexperienced Lewis Dodd playing at scrum half for St. Helens versus the veteran standoff from the Catalan Dragons and James Maloney, who is playing his final game of professional rugby league before taking up a captain coaching role with Lesignan in the French League Championship, which only gets underway in not even a week after the grand final. So he's going to be very busy indeed, is James Maloney. And you got to look at it in the middle of the field as well. It is literally going to be Alex Walmsley spearheading the St. Helens charge, urging the forwards. So there is going to be pressure on Bousquet and Sam Cassiano as two of the bigger men in the Catalan pack to try and match it with Walmsley in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
The evidence shows you contain Alex Walmsley, your prospects of beating St. Helens go up exponentially. You don't, they're just going to run over the top of you.
Exactly. But
that's what it comes down to.
It definitely will be because they've got strike power. Both teams have got strike power.
Both teams have got strike. If it's going to be, it'll be a grand final of many things, but it's not going to be a blowout. It's actually going to mirror the NRL Grand Final we've just experienced.
Yeah, I completely
edge of your seat, fast, entertaining football, where you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, unpredictable, intense, and everything. Everything we saw over here in Australia is going to be replicated over in England.
It certainly is. So now comes that time for probably the last time in the Betfred Super League for this year. Final prediction.
St. Helens, they've done it time and time again. First grand final for Catlands, though. So the pressure will be on them. Pressure will also be on St. Helens, but I don't think as much as what Catlands, because St. Helens have been there, done that before. As much as St. Helens is the top side, Catlands have dominated all season long, and I love to see them to win it. So I'm going to say Catlands 1-12.
Okay. Well, no, I agree with you. I think Catalan are the benchmark, and we've set the benchmark in the part, and the confidence is they know how to take St. Helens on. I think everyone can remember the Magic Weekend meeting only a few weeks back. Down 24-10 or close to it, 3 tries in the space of 15 minutes to level the game off and then kick the match-winning drop goal in extra time. They know what to expect from the Saints side. But as the wise man, Eddie Hemmings, once said, never write off the Saints. I think there are very wise words, and I think many a team have fallen foul of those words in the past, whether it be the try of White to West, late-minute drop goal, to win games or grand finals. I'm not going to write off the Saints right here. And I predicted that St. Helens would win at the start of the year. So, like with the Rabbitohs, that didn't come to fruition. I'm going to stick with my start of year predictions and say St. Helens to win in a 1-12 margin. And I'm going to pick Alex Walmsley. Well, I'm going to predict Alex Walmsley will be the Harry Sunderland medalist.
That's if St. Helens wins.
Yep.
Okay, well, if Catland wins, I reckon it's either going to come down to either Maloney or Sam Tompkins to pick up the man of the match if Catland win.
So split down the middle with the final 80 minutes at stake. Hey, now that's all for the Betfred Super League. Now we turn our attention back to the championship for the final 80 minutes that will decide the 12th team in Super League 2022. Toulouse Olympique versus the Featherstone Rovers. Another mirror, a 1v2 decider for the £1 million game. The loser, they stay in the championship for that year. The winner, it's in the name. £1 million and a place in the Betfred Super League for 2022. It's a very lucrative prize to play off.
It most certainly is. And the rate that Featherstone, and Toulouse, but more Featherstone, especially last week, I've been playing, anything can literally happen. It's another mouth-watering game.
It can, and it certainly will.
Right. Like I said, 1v2 in both the Championship and the Super League. Like, how often does that happen? Probably
Doesn't
happens
happen
more
very
often.
rarely.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the French team. I'm going to say Toulouse 1-12.
So you're going for the French double?
Yeah, I'm going for the French double to have two French teams win their respective competitions and to have two French teams in the Betfred Super League in 2022.
It's a mouth-watering prospect. It truly is.
This one's also going to be on the edge of your seat stuff as well.
And I definitely think the people of Toulouse will get behind their men in royal blue to help them reach the top flight that English Rugby League has to offer. I think in a similar vein to the 2019 £1 million game between Toronto and Featherstone, I got to go with the home side. I'm back in Toulouse, 13 the plus.
13 plus. Wow. Okay.
I think this is going to be a very high scoring affair, and I think Toulouse will take a lot of lessons out of that escape, I will call it, against the Batley Bulldogs.
Yeah, you could say an escape. Yep. So we agree on one team in the championship. We split down the middle in the Super League.
Yeah, that is certainly the case right there. Now, interesting World Cup developments going on here. Of course, we know the Rugby League World Cup has been postponed until 2022, but it hasn't stopped New Zealand Rugby League naming a 38-man World Cup squad. Or I would think more than likely it'll be rationed down to probably the final 25 or 26 to take to the UK in mid-October.
Wow.
But the members of this squad include, well, in alphabetical order, Josh Aloiai, Nelson Asofa Solomona, both the Bromwich boys, Dylan Brown, Aaron Clark, Fisher Harris, Kieran Foran, Hamlin Ueli, Corey Harawira-Naira, Morgan Harper, Tohu Harris, Harris Tavita, Chanel that is, Peter Hiku, Jerome Hughes, Jermaine Asako, Sean Johnson, Isaac Liu, Joey Manu, Marshall King, Mamalo, Mulatalo, Nicole Klukstad, Nikora, Nikorima, Niokore, Isaiah Papali'i, Kevin Proctor, Jordan Rapana, Jordan Ricky, Josh Schuster, Bailey Simonson, Brandon and Remus Smith, Joe Tapane, Tavunga, Waria Hargraves, and the captain, Dallin Watene Zelezniak. So what do we make of this 38-man squad that New Zealand Rugby League has named?
Well, it's a very, very strong squad indeed. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be hard to narrow it down as well.
I wonder why the Kiwis have chosen to name this wider World Cup squad now. I'm a bit confused by that. Why would they name a World Cup squad 12 months and 1 week away from the actual World Cup starting point? That's what I want to know.
I honestly do not know, but I think it could be to motivate the players to play the absolute best in 2022 / train the house down in pre-season. Try their absolute hardest to try and get into that squad, possibly.
I just think it's a little bit early to be naming a World Cup squad. A lot can happen in 12 months. And rugby league is no exception to this. And I think what the Kiwis have done, I would say they have done a little bit of poaching from Toa Samoa. Because I would have thought Dylan Brown, well, in the case of Dylan Brown, Aloye, and in the case of Ronaldo Mulatalo, I would have thought first picked for Toa Samoa, no questions.
Well, maybe they might change. That's probably why they named there yet as well. Because if, like you said, those players might decide to go to Toa Samoa and represent them instead of the Kiwis, and they've still got other options there to fill in those spots.
I just think,
like
I said, I still think it's way too early, given the fact that they were one of the bigger, well, the second hurdle in opposition to the World Cup going ahead this year. Yeah, and of course, we all know the ARL document ended about this. The NRL clubs, of course, comes back to the NRL clubs and what they want. I don't know. Is it a good squad? Well, interesting. I can say for the East, given Kieran Foran, last time he played for New Zealand against Great Britain, he actually did his shoulder again, so that didn't go well. It lasted all the 5 minutes. Who takes over from Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at fullback? A couple of interesting options. Jermaine Azarko, potentially a candidate, but not very, very good form at the moment from him. Chantical Cookstad could be another, so he could potentially rob the Cook Islands of an opportunity. And of course, there is Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. So Michael Maguire, he's got a lot of options to play with and some big calls to make.
Yes, he certainly does. But you can also add in Jordan. I know these are slightly out of position, but Jordan Rapana and Baylor Thompson can also play fullback, as we have seen in club mate. So I know they're out of position, but there's still options for fullbacks.
That is fairly true.
And maybe even Joey Manu as well.
Yeah.
You know what he's capable of here.
I think we look at Manu. He is capable of playing at fullback, but I think everyone knows right center. He's one of the best centers in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that there, but he's probably like the last resort fullback.
Backup. We'll just say backup for now.
Yeah. But yeah, there is
interesting. Oh no, that's right. I was about to say interesting. Kalen Pong is not odd name, but I remembered he changed his eligibility to Australia so he could play Origin for Queensland because that's what Queensland does.
Yes.
That they just take all the Pacific Islanders not born in Queensland and they just say, yeah, they're Queenslanders.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal with it.
Yeah. But yeah, there are some interesting names in there though. So there's plenty of experience. Like you got names like Wood Bromwich brothers, Soft Solomona, Fisher Harris, Foran,
Morgan Harper. I would say Morgan Harper's a very interesting decision.
Yeah.
Aaron Clark's a little bit underrated for me though.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise inclusion. I think that's the biggest surprise inclusion out of the whole squad is Aaron Clark.
Isaiah Papali is no surprise given the way he's played this year.
No, he deserves it. Absolutely deserves it 100%.
He definitely does. And I think if they were actually going to play test matches this year, we could assess where the side is at, but because they're probably not going to, because they're going to complain that pre-season's only 3 weeks away, they're not going to play a test match. So we're really going to have to wait until hopefully middle of next year at the earliest to try and see this in action, because we can't afford to not have a test match for 3 years going into a World Cup year.
Well, no. There needs to be some sort of rep footy, like test matches in the mid-year to build up to the World Cup.
It's just not feasible not to go 3 years without a test match into a World Cup year. It's only asking for trouble. But that is a story and a topic for another day, because it is now full time from us. If you like this edition of the Sideline Chat podcast, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell so you never miss a week of rugby league action. Hope you enjoy the Grand Finals going on ahead, and we will try and come up with an off-season plan. And who knows what we got in store? We don't even know what we got in store yet, but we will think of something, and we'll let you know when the time comes. Along with Mark Hendry, I am Connor Marcellus, and you have been listening to the Sideline Chat podcast. We'll see you next week.
See you, folks.